vending in 2025. I started seeing things online about owning vending machines. Now, me personally, I never knew that you can own vending machines because I always thought it was like corporations or like big name companies that ran those things. So I never knew that that was even in the deck of cards for a regular person like myself to even go into vending. So I started doing research. I started looking up YouTube videos, and then I realized that there's actually a community of people that own vending machines, stock them, service them themselves. Those that have a kind of larger scale of vending machine, they have a team that helps them stock and fill those machines. So I started doing more research, looking up videos on YouTube. But then kind of when I started that journey, I realized that I was having to go through so many videos just to kind of get just the basic steps on how to get this thing off the ground. The ways that you can start are using the website usevending.com, eBay, and the ones that I chose were Facebook Marketplace and OfferUp. Now, the things that you have to figure out at the beginning are if you want new machines, used machines, or refurbished machines. I realized quickly that it was not going to be a new machine because when I started looking at the prices of new machines, they were ranging anywhere from like $10,000 to $15,000. I knew for sure that that was way out of the budget for me. So I looked up refurbished machines. Refurbished machines being that they are used machines and a company or an individual has brought the machine back to life. They've kind of put new parts. They've just got it back to the standard of it almost being new, but it's still a used machine. But then the benefit of that is like you can kind of get those warranties that you would with a new machine. And then of course used machines are just like you're buying a used car from somewhere. It's typically as is. And I knew when I started thinking about like the price range, I knew that the used machine was going to be more suited for me. And I started going through Facebook Marketplace and OfferUp. I chose those two platforms because I like to be able to actually direct message someone that's actually selling a machine. If they're serious, they're going to reach back out to me. So of course I went through the cycle and I started realizing that I was messaging some people that had machines listed. They were not getting back to me, or they were taking days to get back to me. And that's just not how I wanted to do business. I had to kind of go through the motion of realizing that there are a lot of people scamming as well. Those people were listing machines at like $500, $300, and they're advertising it as being a brand new machine. And I'm like, that's, once you start to understand the price ranges of these machines, then you know for sure that that's not legitimate. And then when you start kind of going through the cycle of like what I went through, where people wanted me to send deposits to hold the machine, and they're like, oh, send a deposit to hold the machine, we'll guarantee that you will get the machine. So me personally, I'm like, well, if this machine is too good to be true, why would you want to just hold the machine for me sending this little deposit and not just selling it to somebody else? Because I see the people out there. There's a wide range of people that want to get into the vending machine industry, but they just don't know how, kind of like how I did. So I realized that, I kind of had to weed through all the stuff that just wasn't making sense to me. So then I found a machine that seemed, pretty good, seemed like the price was well, the person seemed legit, they were getting back to me, they were responding to all my messages. Pricing was about $800 to $1,000 for drink and snack machine. So I'm like, okay, when can we meet? And then we go through the cycle of everything. And then I'm like, okay, well, where can I put the machine? And he's like, well, that's kind of your job to get that figured out. And then I realized that me purchasing this machine without having anywhere to put it was just going to basically put me in a situation that he was in because he had the machine in his garage. So then I realized that I needed to find a location first and then try to buy the machine, because finding the machine was not the hard part. Yeah, of course, when you have to make sure the machine works, make sure everything is operating well, then, that's fine. But the location was actually the harder part. So I went out, created like a little name, made some business cards, started going in these places. And then a lot of companies were either already had vending machines that they were happy with. They had machines of their own that they were servicing and had in their establishments, or they just didn't want them because there were supermarkets and convenience stores like in the area. So it was beginning to get a little harder. I opened up my price range. I think I had it listed at first at like 2,500 to 3,000. I opened it up to 5,000. So once I opened it up to 5,000, then I started seeing something a little different where it was saying machines for sale with location. I didn't understand what that was at first, but of course, going through more YouTube videos, I'm seeing like, okay, you can actually buy a machine on location, which, to be honest, is actually the easier route, because then you don't have to worry about having to go find somewhere to put this machine or actually doing all the legwork to go and find a place to have the machine. So I was okay with that. Is clearly what the route that I want to go. So I kind of just started changing all my filters and OfferUp and on Facebook Marketplace for people selling machines with locations. One thing that I had to find out was that a lot of people were adding huge premiums on the location with those machines. So a machine that they would sell, I had some people would tell me like, oh, well, I'll sell the machines for $1,000 each, but with the location, I want $5,000. So they wanted $3,000 just for providing me the location with the machines on site. And I'm like, absolutely not. So I kind of had to go through that cycle. I finally met someone. He said he had 4 machines on site. It was at a nursing home. He was selling the location with it, all in total for $6,000. Now, that almost seemed like a very good deal, because I'm like, okay, that's about $1,500 a machine. Still was kind of out of my range, but I was going to try to figure out how I can make it work. And I get to the location and I ask him like, how much does the machines generate, like revenue wise, on a weekly basis? He gave me like this crazy number where he was saying it was like $400 to $500 every week. So in my mind, I'm like, why are you giving up something that's generating you $400 to $500 a week? Like, it doesn't make sense to me. And those are things that you would have to figure out. And you kind of just, you know what makes sense and what doesn't. Why would I give away something that's generating that type of cash flow on a weekly basis and you're just giving it up? So when I get to, while we're there, I'm seeing that the machines are fully stocked, but I had to like zero in, and I think this is where my working in retail and comes into play. I immediately go and I look at the dates on those items and the products that was in there. Half of them were already out of date. A lot of stuff was out of date. And I asked him, I'm like, hey, do you know that this stuff is out of date? Of course, when I'm there on location, I realize that there's like a supermarket, like a Walgreens right down the street. There's a convenience store, like right at the light, right before you get to the place. The nursing home has a cafeteria. So I'm like, this just doesn't make sense. And that may be the reason why he is trying to get rid of this location. I ultimately just end up passing. The next location that I found that had 2 vending machines on site, I think he was selling them for like $5,000. And I asked him before I even got there, are the machines able to stay there? He mentioned yes. I'm like, okay, great. What are they generating on a weekly basis? He told me about $200 to $300 a week. So I go to the location. This was at a warehouse. I get to the location. I speak to some of the managers and supervisors. They told me like, yeah, they don't have any issues with the guy, but they did put him on notice that the machines have to be gone within like 2 to 3 months. I'm like, he didn't tell me that. He told me that those machines could stay there and that everything was fine to just remain where they were. And I'm just basically taking over ownership. So the guy comes in shortly after and then we speak. And I'm like, well, the manager just advised me that the machines have to be gone within like 2 to 3 months. And he says, oh yeah, I forgot they told me that. But yeah, you'll be good for 2 to 3 months. You can still get some income and then you just have to move them. I'm like, no, like that's not what I'm trying to do. So I kind of go through that whole cycle and I ultimately did not end up purchasing those machines. So then I end up on OfferUp, where I see a guy has 2 machines listed in a trucking warehouse for $4,000. Now I knew my range was $2,500 to $3,000. So I get there and I realized immediately it's a secluded location, which means that there's no convenience stores, there's no supermarkets or anything in the area. This trucking warehouse was kind of like tucked away, just kind of off on its own. I got there a little earlier before I met the guy and I spoke to the manager. Only feedback that they had was that they wished that the person that owned it would come a little more, because sometimes the machines run empty. And I know when I was speaking to the guy, he told me that the reason he was selling them was because he was being relocated out of town for work, and that he worked so much and he just could not service them. And I was like, everything was lining up. So I already kind of started to feel comfortable. So when he gets there, one thing that you have to make sure when you go look at these machines is that you actually take quarters, you take dollar bills, so that you can make sure everything works. So once he got there, I made sure that he had the keys to open the machine. He opened the machine. I looked at everything inside, the wiring. There was no exposed wiring. It looked very clean in there. There was no rust. Everything kind of just looked well. And then I started dropping my quarters in and putting my dollars in, and I dispensed everything in that machine at least once, for the drink machine and the snack machine. That is very important that you do that, because the last thing you want to do is buy machines and then immediately they stop working, and then you have to pay somebody to come out to try to fix them. So now we get down to the negotiations. He had mentioned to me prior to me getting there that he was being relocated out of town. At that point in time, he told me he had 3 days until he was leaving. The day that we met, he said he was leaving that night. So he had everything in his car ready to go as soon as that sale was done. Now, of course, he tried to go into car salesman mode and, you know, this is a very good offer. I actually have somebody else that wants the machine. She, you know, if this doesn't go through, she's ready to come and pay the money right away. And in my head, I'm thinking like, well, I'm still not going to make an impulse decision that quickly when I'm potentially about to spend this type of money. We started talking numbers. For starters, he did not understand how much money that these machines generated. He couldn't even tell me for sure how much he was pulling out every week. He just gave me an estimate. Secondly, I knew that I kind of had a little leverage because I knew he had to be gone that evening. It was already 4 or 5 o'clock, and he said he wanted to hit the road right after we finished. So that kind of verbiage was making me feel like that he was counting on me to pay for these machines. So he was set on $4,000. I immediately started my offer at $2,000. He thought about it and he said that he would go down to $3,000. I said, okay, well, I'll meet you in the middle at $2,500. He was like, okay, well, I don't know if I could do $2,500, but do $2,800. And I said, I have $2,500. And he says, okay, well, what about $2,550? And I said, perfect. Deal done. Gave me the keys. We did like a written receipt. And that was it. And the first thing that I did was kind of go around with a spreadsheet and I just said, hey, you know, things that y'all may want in the machines that you haven't seen. And then that's a type of situation where you don't sit there and cater to every single thing that you see on that list. But if you see like common things that are just being listed multiple times, those are things to entertain. Since I've taken over, I had to increase pricing because he had everything priced at like $1 across the board between the snack and the drink machine. So I kind of had to put better snack selection, better drink selections. I was able to increase the price, and it wasn't like an immediate thing. I put flyers around and let everyone know the prices would be increasing just because of the cost of everything that was associated with actually purchasing these things, driving to the stores to get them, the time that it's taken to get them. And I can tell you, there are so many things to think about, and I can make another video and go into detail about every little thing with how to start the vending. But this was more so just for the broad general sense. Some people will tell you that owning vending machines, that is work, but I feel like starting out when you have like 2 to 4, maybe even 6 machines, with my 2 machines, I spend about 2 hours a week. That's not that much. And then the machine does all the work. And 2 years in, I have not had any issues with that vending machine location at all. Everything sells well. I have a lot of times when things sell out. That location has been very good. I've had no complaints, and it's been 2 years. Now, you know, when you start to get to like, when you start to scale that a little bigger, you know, you start, you know, schools, hospitals, like huge corporations and things like that. A lot of times they would request that you pay for your machines to be in there. So of course they would probably want like a percentage of your sales and things that, you know, those are things that you have to keep up with and provide. And of course, some people may say like, how do people keep up with sales when it's just a cash machine? A lot of machines nowadays have card readers. If the machine has a card reader, it does keep track of your sales. It also has the ability to keep track of your inventory, so you know things that are selling, the pace that they're selling. It's very detailed. So me personally, I don't have card readers on my machines. But those are just things that I can kind of go into detail about later, because I have done the research and I do understand it. But the location where I have these machines, it's a trucking warehouse. They're very dusty in there. I don't want to kind of put, you know, those very nice card readers, that because the cash and change does very well. And then people would ask, like, how did I fund my machines, and how did I, and I'll just be transparent. The way that I pay for my machines is I use my tax return. I use my tax return because, you know, for years I was just blowing my tax return money on just crazy things that I could not even tell you today what I bought. So I knew that year I wanted to do something a little more beneficial that actually did create a stream of income for me. And now, you know, that I've gotten comfortable with it, I've kind of worked out like my balance on how to, you know, the days of the week that I want to go, how I purchase the things. I go and purchase all my things from Sam's Club. Of course, you know, there are other stores that may have sales or deals. Those are just the best days. You know, of course, after Halloween, when they mark down candy, Christmas, depending on the selection of whatever you may get, there are sales. So those are things that just help maximize profits. So with my vending machines, every week I make about, I would say on a good week, about $150 that I'll pull out between both machines. And then, you know, of course, like summer months, that's when things just kind of like really ramp up with drinks and snacks. And of course, you have to still remove like the cost of refilling your product. But, you know, the profits are still pretty well. For me, not having to be there every day, the machine does all the work, I think is great. So I think it's definitely worth getting into vending. I know this video was kind of all over the place. But this was just like a broad sense to kind of touch on. I know I talked about it in my first video on working in retail for Walmart, and how it helped me purchase my first home. But also with that is it helped me purchase my vending business that I now operate. And, you know, now that I've gotten comfortable with the 2 machines that I have, I am in the process of looking for 2 more machines on location. And that's just the easier way for me, but it's just less leg work. It's less of a headache if it's on location. You just have to make sure it's a good location, making sure that the machines can actually remain on location, and making sure that they're actually spending money in the vending machine. Because if not, then it's just a waste, and then you would ultimately have to move location. I think vending is just it's a good way to go. A lot of people will tell you that they think vending is a dying industry. For whatever reason, I don't know why, because the way I see it is that vending has been elevating. Now you see vending machines with hair, you see vending machines with, they're making food, they have electronics, they're selling high-end sunglasses, perfumes, and colognes. Like I've seen I've just seen it grow. But if you found this video to be insightful, inspiring, helpful, informative, answered any type of questions that you may have had about getting into vending, please be sure to like the video. Drop down in the comment section and let me know what type of side hustles that you may be creating in 2025 to create another stream of income. Lastly, please subscribe to the channel so you can stay up to date with all the new videos that I'll be dropping weekly. Appreciate y'all.